Hello, and welcome to Learn Linux Now. I am your host, Edward. This is session 2, part 2, in which I discuss the different Linux versions. In part 1, I briefly discussed desktop and server versions of Linux. In this discussion, I'm going to show you and discuss desktop environments. And I briefly touched on desktop environments from the last recording, but here I'm going to go over the desktop environments a little bit more. Now, as far as a desktop environment, again, these are, and even a window and a tiling window manager, these are user experiences in a desktop or server version, and you can install any of these in a desktop or server distribution. But if you, say for instance, if you were to choose Ubuntu desktop, you would be presented with GNOME as a default desktop environment. And same for Fedora. If you went to Fedora's website and choose the Fedora workstation, their default is GNOME. I currently use KDE myself. I was using GNOME for a number of years, mainly because in the development of KDE, their user experience wasn't that great in my opinion, so I used GNOME for a little while. But I've actually recently switched to KDE, and because it's gotten better. KDE is a great choice for a desktop environment, in my opinion, and one I have chosen. Whereas with GNOME, you're kind of versus KDE, you're limited in a GNOME desktop environment of what you can do as far as customization. KDE gives you a little bit more room, actually a lot more room to customize, but you don't have to use just one desktop environment. And that's the great thing about Linux and choosing a Linux distribution, is that even though I'm using KDE version of Fedora, I can still go and install GNOME if I wanted to, and still use GNOME as a choice to choose when I first log in, and I will show you that here in a moment. But again, here's just a few listed here of desktop environments, but there are a lot more to choose from out there. You can do a search, web search for desktop environments, and can be presented with quite a few to choose from. And again, that's the great thing about Linux, is you have choice, not just in a distribution, but even in your user experience. And then there are some other desktop distros that are dedicated to a specific desktop environment, and I have a few listed here. Where Kubuntu, you go to Kubuntu's website and you install Kubuntu, you are presented with KDE as the default desktop environment. Same for Xubuntu and Ubuntu Mate. However, if you go to a Fedora's website, at the very bottom of their website, they have something called Fedora Spins, where they have different desktop environments to choose from, and even a tiling window manager in i3. So, for instance, if you wanted to try out KDE Plasma, they give you a download of Fedora that's just for KDE. Same for XFCE and Mate. And that's again, that's kind of one of the reasons why I chose Fedora, not just because it's an RPM base, but I do love Fedora. I love using Fedora. It's not to say you should use Fedora. You can choose and use whatever you want to. If you want Ubuntu based, then definitely go check out any one of these desktop distributions. And then we get a window manager. You can choose a window manager if you want, and I have listed here as OpenBox, but there's quite a few other window managers out there. And again, this is another choice of a user experience versus a desktop environment, is a window manager. And same for a tiling window manager. And the thing about the tiling window managers and a window manager is that these are a little bit how should I say, a smaller footprint, if you will, versus a desktop environment, and that you are presented with, I guess, if you will, I don't know if I want to use the word limitations. It's not really limited, it's just you don't have a broader user experience. And I will show you a demo here in a moment. But if you have, say for instance, an older laptop that has very limited resources, especially with a video card, OpenBox or another window manager, even a tiling window manager may be a good choice for you. However, a caveat here is that it's not something I would normally recommend for a new user, as they pretty much require a little bit more of a learning curve, especially with a tiling window manager. I mean, there is some simplicity in the window manager that you could still use and try, but with the tiling manager definitely comes with more of a learning curve. But as far as desktop environments and hardware that has lower resources, there are others out there like an XFCE or LXQT that are good for older hardware that has very limited resources too. So you don't really normally have to choose a window manager or a tiling window manager. And I'm going to give you a little brief demo here. So if we choose a window manager, I have here my KDE install on my workstation, on my virtual machine. I had actually installed OpenBox. And that's one thing that's pretty cool about if you do install multiple desktop environments or window managers or tiling window managers, that you can choose which one you want to log in. So in this, I'm going to choose OpenBox to log in. So when you log in, you're pretty much presented with a very limited user experience, but it's still usable. It's quite wonderful. In this scenario, you would just basically right-click, and you are given a menu to choose from for choosing your applications, and even your preferences and any other administrative tasks that you need to do, and also even a terminal if you wanted to use a terminal. So that's OpenBox, and it's still very usable, but again, you're presented with I guess you could say something that's not as pretty, if you will. So that is OpenBox, and if you want to try it out, I encourage you to try it out. Maybe even just put it on a virtual machine, and again, that's something I'm going to discuss later on our sessions, is setting up a virtual machine to test these out. So I'm going to log out of OpenBox, and then I'm going to go to i3 install. Again, this is a Fedora version that I chose, and with i3, again, it's a little bit more of a learning curve, where when you first log in, this is what you're presented with. With a tiling window manager, you're pretty much you can still use your mouse, but it's more focused on using keyboard shortcuts. And what I say by that is, if I wanted to, say for instance, open up a terminal, again, this is a default install without the video card configured. If I wanted to open up a terminal, I would actually hit the command button and then enter for a terminal. Very a minimalistic terminal emulator here. And I've already done some pre-configuration, so I'm gonna make this video video interface just a little bit bigger and more presentable as far as resolution. So that's a little bit better resolution here. So if I wanted to open up an application, I would actually have to hit the command and command D, I believe it is. Again, that's the thing about a tiling window manager, is just remembering the different shortcuts to open up actions. So the command D opens up, as you can see at the very top, kind of what's a launcher, if you will. So for instance, if I wanted to open up Firefox, I would type in Firefox, be presented with these other options, but I'm going to hit enter for Firefox, and Firefox will open up in another window. I'm going to choose to exit out of the terminal, and this is Firefox. Again, you still have a mouse to use, but again, there's a reliability of knowing what your keyboard shortcuts are, and there is customization. You can customize the configuration. So I can actually go into the config and show you what you can configure, and it's very customizable. And this is the config, and you can add and make changes to this configuration to where you can put in your own custom keyboard shortcuts if you wanted to launch different windows, different applications, and even different workspaces. You have multiple workspaces, and that's something maybe I can discuss a little bit later in your desktop environments. But a lot of the desktop environments and desktop managers have multiple workstations, multiple workspaces, and that where this is one window you can work from, but I can open up another window that may have other applications running. But this is the config file that you can actually customize for your different keyboard shortcuts. And that's it. I mean, again, if you wanted to try this and play around with this, definitely, this is something you could definitely try inside a virtual machine. Another point I wanted to make is that if for learning about i3 and any of the other window managers and desktop environments, there's plenty of videos out there for learning how to use, especially i3. I actually, even myself, had to go to YouTube and look up video tutorials on how to use i3, as there, like I said, there is a little bit of a learning curve. But for now, that is it. I encourage you to come back for next session, where I will continue to discuss and try to teach you Linux. But for now, take care and be kind.